Hello everybody and welcome back to another Ross Reviews, where today we are doing a good old battle between two absolutely legendary Aussie Fords. That being an FPV GT versus an FPV F6 310. Now both of these cars are not stock. The F6 over here is pushing 550 rear wheel horsepower and over 1,000 Newton meters of torque. The GT over here, this is pushing over 650 rear wheel horsepower and about 900 Newton meters of torque. Modified 6 versus modified 8. Let's get into it. Now let's introduce these two cars. So starting off here with the F6, this is a 2008 pre-production actually. This thing had a 4-liter inline-6 turbo Barra, made about 310 kilowatts, so about 416 horsepower from factory, and about 565 Newton meters or 416 pound-foot of torque. 0 to 100 in this thing was claimed at about 4.9 seconds, so this thing is quick. And for value and modifications and everything, y'all know this is the top of the top. Now over here with the GT, this is a 2011, so just before the facelift. This came out with a 5-liter supercharged V8, and this thing is a beast from factory. 335 kilowatts, so about 476 horsepower, and 570 Newton meters, so about 420 pound-foot of torque. 0 to 100 in this thing is again about 5 seconds. Now this particular one is running the 6-speed ZF, and this one has got the 6-speed manual. So again, it's going to be really fun to just see the differences again in a highly modified car versus ZF versus the manual. Now let's get into the good stuff. I've got the paper right here. Let's just quickly go over each of these cars' mods and then get them out on the road. So let's start here with the F6. This has got a fully built motor, so you know we're talking rods, pistons, atomic gear throughout. Plasma Man intercooler on this. We've got 1000cc injectors, upgraded clutch, high flow turbo. We do have a Hirsch short shifter, coilovers, and of course it has a full exhaust system. And yeah, just look at this engine bay. This is going to be a lot of fun. Now talking about the GT, this is really impressive. This has got an absolutely staggering amount of modification, so we'll just quickly go over the basics here. It's got a 500 horsepower cooler, Street Fighter supercharger here upgrade with a 58 mil pulley. The brake rotors have been upgraded. It's got a Darrell upgraded transcooler. Coilovers in this again. We have sway bars at the front and rear put in. Dual fuel pumps with flex fuel kit, so this can run E85, and with a full tank at E85 this will do over 700 rear wheel horsepower. Now there is a little bit in there, so we'll see how much power we get out of this when we drive it. 1050cc injectors, oil pump gears, the billet pump has been done, True Track diff. An M86 diff hat has been put in, which eliminates them damn diff bushes, which is a very good mod. And then again, a 3-inch Manta exhaust system with high flow cats and headers. So yeah, this yeah, is not a cheap build. Let's get into the F6 first here, guys, because this is what I'm used to. It's we'll start it off a little bit smaller, even though this is no slouch, but yeah. Let's get in the F6, fire them up, and do a sound test. All right, so in the F6, I thought I'd start this off with something I know a little bit more of. We've had some pretty serious Barras on the channel before, so yeah, we'll run this one first, and I'm excited. Already, the Hurst short shifter is absolutely incredible. How tight it is. Now this has got 550 rear wheel horsepower, and it's one of the highest horsepower Barras I think I've had on the channel. I've had quite a few around the 500 range. I believe I did have a blue one that was at about 600, and every time I get in one of these things, it is just smiles to the roof. You know, especially in the manual. Look, I know the ZF is kind of the preferred gearbox, especially for the Barra to be matched with, but there is something just so special about running your own gears. It really is. Now, these things from new were an absolute bargain in my mind. You know, these were starting at about 55 grand when they launched, and mate, that was an absolute bargain for how much performance you got. You know, for how much car this is. 55 grand back in the day, that was just wow. Now on the used market, these cars have, everybody knows, you know, they've skyrocketed. This thing nowadays is chasing around that $40,000, $50,000 mark easily, and you know, I think over time it's not going to go down, because these are so special. They can make so much power. They're so much fun to drive, and they are seriously one of Australia's best ever made cars. Wow, this thing. The noise! The noise! And on the freeway, you know, with that 1,000 Newton meters of torque, that is where you get all of that enjoyment out of this thing. Just lay into it. And it is gone, boy. I tell you what. Wow. And I've got to say, you know, you look at this F6, it's absolutely beautiful. You know, the dash green really works on this car. I'm generally not a huge fan of crazy out there colors, but on the F6, it's something else. You know, all of the real FPV colors, they do really suit these FG body styles. And he's got the XR8 bonnet, again, which I'm not generally a huge fan of on a 6, but you know, the noise and the power and the stance of this thing, you know, it really does work on this car. You know, you see this thing from the front end, and it is mean. It's a very, very aggressive looking front end on this car. And that's actually one of the differences you can spot out between the GT and the FPV, is the front bar is slightly different. So obviously we have a bigger opening kind of cut out down there for the intercooler. And also in the mesh grille, it's actually a different pattern. So if you zoom in on that, you will see it's actually a little bit of a different pattern compared to the V8 and the Barra. Now, one really interesting fact about this F6 being modified, look, from standard factory, these things did about 12 liters per 100 Ks. This one, even with all the modifications done to it, is running a 11.9 liters per 100 Ks on average, which seems absolutely staggering to me, that you can be, you know, running this much power and it's still that fuel efficient. That is really, really interesting. Yeah, there's nothing like changing your own gears in a Barra. Look, I love the ZF, but oh, it's something else. And this really reminds me of that 500 horsepower F6 I reviewed probably about a year ago now, and man, they are just so good. They are so damn good. And the boxes in these are really, really nice to shift with. You know, it's got obviously a Hurst short shifter put in, but man, even from factory, they are good. Oh my goodness. That is, wow. That is nice. Boy, there's just nothing like sending it in a well done Barra. You know, these FPVs, they're just something magical. Like, oh my God. The fact that the rest of the world, you know, they didn't get these FPVs is just an absolute crime. Wow. And you just listen to that noise. Oh man. Wow, it sounds good. That blow-off valve. Oof. It's a joy. Now this has actually been claimed to spit flames every now and then, so I hope we could have caught one, although I'm not 100% sure, but the noise is just so nice in this thing, it really is. Holy oh my. I couldn't even flat foot it. I could not flat foot it. I got close at one point and this thing just started getting squirrely all over the place. Wow, that is absolutely insane. It feels like I was driving on like a very, very snowy road. That is what. And it is a hot, sticky day, and these tires are warm. My goodness. You got to be careful in this thing. Wow.
Two hours later.
All right, guys. Anyways, back in the GT. We've had a bit of drama since we last left and lost the camera actually in the process. Somebody's been very dishonest and taking my GoPro that's fallen down on the road, and 10 minutes later it's gone. So let's hope we can find that, and whoever maybe found it can be a good cunt and return it. Unfortunately, we did have a run-in with some cops who were very friendly though, actually, so all good. Thankfully, we do live in WA where the police aren't always out to get you. Now, this GT, as we experienced there before, is absolutely just insane. It's absolutely monstrous. You know, it is actually scary to push this thing. You know, if you flat foot this car, there is no if it breaks traction, it will break traction, and it will break traction at speed. You know, you really have to have a sound way of driving, know the car, and be focused, because it takes just about all of you to keep this beast in a straight line. Now, the big thing driving this that I noticed that's different from the Barra is, it might just be the fact that it's in the ZF formation here, is that it just feels a lot more livable. I think it feels smoother. It feels very, you know, when you're just putting around, it almost feels like it can be almost called mundane. You know, you're just idling around here, it's just very nice. You don't hear a lot of outside noises or anything. Seats are very comfortable. Driving position is nice. It's just a really nice car. You know, you park up at the lights here, it's not rattling, it's not flopping all around the place. It's just nice. Feels like it's from factory, and yet this thing is pushing on E85 over 700 horsepower. So You know, this has currently got a mixture of E85 in there right now, so we're in between 650 and 700. Now, these GTs from new were quite a bit more expensive than the F6 for whatever reason. I think that was to do with just the huge following the V8s have always had here. You know, with the V8 motorsports, you know, the racing, it's just what a lot of the old school guys grew up with and love. And the F6, I think, had a lot to prove still at that point. So this from new was starting at about 71 grand, you know, and you added in, you know, all the options, you know, you could be stacking up a pretty hefty bill for one of these locally made Fords. Look, now on the used market, these have held their value extremely well. In the last couple of years, these have really skyrocketed again. And look, to buy one nowadays, you're going to be looking at the $60,000, $70,000 mark still. That is how much they have kept their value. Look, I would love it to have been a 6-speed manual. There's just something about a V8 with a manual. And look, the ZF is phenomenal, and it does a great job of what it's doing. But it's just a little bit, just lacks a little bit of that excitement for me personally. When I'm cruising along in this right now, the ZF is just, it's too comfortable, if that's even a word for it, you know, which it's great for cruising, and it depends on what you want from this particular vehicle, but I really do think that the 8s really suit the manuals, and the Barras really suit the ZFs. And the noise out of this 3-inch Manta it is really nice, and as you're just cruising along, it's not droney, it's not overpowering. You know, you don't even really hear it when you're just cruising. It's only when you kind of put your foot into her a bit, she awakens and lets off that bark. Now, as for fuel economy as well in this GT, look, the fuel economy was worse than the Barra. Obviously, this is a V8 supercharged. This thing was consuming about 14 liters per 100 Ks combined, I believe, from factory, which was relatively good actually for, you know, a big V8. This thing modified, upgraded supercharger. This is running 13 pounds of boost. It's a lot more. This currently is drinking about 23 liters per 100 K, so it is thirsty. And it's so refreshing, I gotta say, to see a GT, you know, a good old 5-liter supercharged V8 here, properly worked and done extremely well, because it takes a lot of money to do this, and it is not something that people take on lightly. You know, the majority of people who are going to go for this kind of power will jump in the Barra because it is just so much more affordable to get there. So I really take my hat off to anyone who's properly gotten in and worked on one of these 5-liter V8s from Ford, because they are an extremely good engine. They really are. Now, after all of that mess, guys, look, what are the end results here? Well, both the F6 and the GT are absolutely amazing pieces of Aussie history here. You know, each car has its own character, its own charm, and you can't really pick which one is better. It is all preference. So I want to hear from you guys. Which one did you like the most? You know, did you like the F6, the GT? What about it? Which one do you want in your garage? I want to hear you. Write it in the comments down below. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. If you're new here, please go ahead and hit that like button. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you on that next video.